Welcome, everybody. This is another great episode of Pilltalkpodcast coming at you with a good friend of mine, Dr. Jovin Lezeau, coming at you, letting you know a little bit about pharmacy, residency, and he also has his own podcast called Capsule Podcast. So we'll get into that a little later as well. So no further introduction. How you doing today?
I'm tired, to be honest with you, which I think that means I've been a good resident. So that's a good thing if I'm feeling tired. So that's a good sign. Anybody that's pursuing a residency, you'll understand once you go through it, or if you've gone through it before, you know what I mean when I say I'm tired. But it's a rewarding experience and something I wouldn't not recommend to somebody, but tired, but excited to be on your platform and be able to share my thoughts and opinions with all of your listeners today.
Man, I appreciate you. I'm happy that I was able to bless your platform a little while ago.
Yeah.
So hopefully that was a great episode to get out there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring you on to my podcast so that you can get your information out. Because I learned so much from you from that episode that I wanted you to come share some of the information with me again and with my audience.
Oh, I appreciate that. And first off, I just want to say I learned a lot from you as well. Definitely how like the scheduling with Calendly, learning about that. I started applying that myself. So thank you for that. That helps a lot tremendously, especially when you have a lot of different people on the team. Definitely, your marketing skills, different things that you're doing to expand your podcast and your platform to make yourself more of a nationally syndicated podcast. And that's something that I have aspirations for. So I appreciate you for definitely schooling me to that, educating me on that. I took my notes. So look out for me soon, America. I'm coming.
Hey, you already here.
I'm trying.
So,
I'll go ahead and start off talking about why pharmacy. All right. I think it's always good to have a little background.
Yeah.
For some people, I feel like they have like a calling. I don't know if I had a calling. I wouldn't say that for me. For me, it was just, I was really good at organic chemistry. I enjoyed learning about pathophysiology. So I figured the best career that could tie in pathophysiology and organic chem and drugs would be pharmacy. So I just decided to do that. It's that simple, nothing extravagant. I'm sorry. That's just what made me pursue pharmacy. And I did it and it's worked out for me so far. So I just stuck with it, to be honest with you.
You had a love for chemistry and then you just applied that and that would lead you to becoming a pharmacist?
Basically, yeah. It was more of a sit down with one of my professors. I did not keep in touch with her. I want to say her name was Elizabeth Designer, if I remember correctly. And she was talking about, I think you have a lot of talent. I think you're a bright student. And this was in undergrad. I went to undergrad at UCF. That's the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And she recommended I go the MD route. And I was just like, I don't have it in me to do that much schooling. So I was like, hey, I really like pathophysiology and learning about drugs and how they affect the body, the mechanism of action. I like the organic chemistry component on how they design the drug. So I figured, pharmacy would be a better route. And talking to her, she advised that. The college advisors that I also had recommended that as well. So I just decided to pursue it and never look back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, a good thing that she was there to help you figure this out, because we do need good pharmacists in the field, because as you can tell, the demographics that we're treating, it's a lot of people that's up in age now and trying to make sure that they stay healthy and well. And we do need people that's loving what they do to help those people.
Yeah. And that's something that I believe. I think a lot of people think you have to be passionate about something in the beginning, and that's where they get confused. Passion can come. I didn't find my passion in pharmacy, I would say, until honestly last year, my 4th year as a pharmacy student. I knew I would find it eventually because there's so many different things you can do in pharmacy, but it's like, sometimes it's a process to finding that passion and finding what you love. And that process can take a while for some. It could be immediate for others, but it will happen. And once that happens, just, lock in and pursue that.
Yeah.
And that's what I decided to do.
that's a great segue into my next question. Because you said you finished pharmacy school and you started a residency. And now you said you found your passion. And I know in residency, you touch so many different areas of pharmacy. So I would like to ask you, what is your passion at this moment? What do you see yourself pursuing outside of residency, after residency as a pharmacist?
So I just want to backtrack a little. So just for everybody listening, I went to the University of Florida for pharmacy school. And then during my fourth year on rotations, I never thought I would like patient interaction. But during my ambulatory care rotation, I had a blast. And I figured I would like an ambulatory care role. I also really enjoyed my public specialty rotation as well. So I knew I wanted to be involved in some type of ambulatory care clinic role after that experience, excuse me. And then I also had some transitions of care experience. So going through my residency now, that's when I'm done with this. I would like to be involved in some type of ambulatory care clinic, a specialty clinic, or any transitions of care realm. Like those are my three things that I'm looking for, my three fields in pharmacy. And I also have a crush, I would like to say, on psychiatry. I think psych is always very interesting. I don't see myself doing a PGY2 in it, but that's something that I would like to learn more about and spend some time with some psychiatric pharmacists. And I'm also really into pharmacogenomics. So those are two other fields I could see myself possibly transitioning to in the future. But as of now, really, it's AmCare, transitions of care, and specialty.
All right. So
specialty pharmacy.
For the audience that's listening right now and don't actually know exactly the different areas of pharmacy, can you break down a little bit about what's AmCare and specialty care? Just a little bit about the three fields that you like or interested in?
Certainly. So AmCare is basically managing chronic disease states. So there's going to be different types of ambulatory care clinic. The residency that I'm at, we have a Coumadin clinic and a diabetes clinic. So those are our two main disease states that we manage. You could have an asthma clinic, a COPD clinic. You could have a heart failure clinic. So those are other clinics that exist out there. There's even psychiatric clinics as well. So there's multiple different clinics that exist, and it's a wide net for AmCare. So any of those chronic disease states, you'll have a lot of patients on with high blood pressure. You have a lot of patients with high cholesterol as well. So be managing those disease states as well. Transitions of care is different depending on the setting. The residency that I'm at, we have an outpatient transitions of care program and not an inpatient. So I'm not exactly sure how the process goes inpatient because we don't have that. But outpatient, it's more we follow up with patients within 2 weeks of being discharged from the hospital that we feel have a high possibility of possibly being readmitted to the hospital, maybe because they don't have a primary care physician. Maybe because of whatever brought them into the hospital. We just want to double check to make sure they're feeling well, if we need to make any adjustments with their medications. So they'll usually come into the clinic. We'll have nurse practitioners that us pharmacists would work alongside with. And through the nurse practitioners, they would be the ones prescribing the medications. And then we'll have a discussion. We'll meet with the patient, go over their medications, see how they're doing, and see if there's any adjustments we need to make. So it's a very collaborative practice, I would say. And I think it's great because you're picking the brains of other healthcare clinicians and their expertise on things. And that's something I truly love. I love working in a group. I love being in a group environment and be able to help solve a tough issue together. And that's basically what transition of care is. You just have these patients that you're trying to prevent from being readmitted. And then the last one, specialty, that one is, if you watch TV, it's all those drugs that you can't pronounce that you see on commercials. So disease states that you'll be managing will probably be HIV, hepatitis B, commercials for stuff like Stelara, Dupixent, for like psoriasis. That's a common one. What else? Rheumatoid arthritis. So Humira might be a drug some of you have heard about. So a lot of those meds are what you'll see in a specialty clinic, and they're very, very expensive. medications. But it's interesting because it's not everybody has it. So it's kind of cool to be in that field to help these people that have like these rare disease states and to help be of service to them, because they were probably struggling a long time to figure out what's wrong with them. And then you're able to actually be able to help them out and make sure they're getting the right meds and see if you can help treat their disease state or prevent it from worsening. So those are the three fields right there in a nutshell.
Appreciate it. So I know that's going to help a whole lot of people out there listening who didn't know the different fields of pharmacy to at least get a little bit of those right there. All right. Yeah. So you're doing all this while being a resident, you're a resident. And then you also have a passion project that you've been working on for years. So let's jump into that. Talk a little bit about Capsule Podcast. So what sparked the idea to start your own podcast?
Okay. So it's the official title is Capsule Production Podcast. So it's a long title, but it actually started with a different pharmacist. His name is Dr. Brandon Clee. He's actually the true originator of it. And he started it maybe about a year and a half before I came on. So he started it. The original vision of this podcast was just to expose pharmacy students, pharmacists, and anybody interested in pharmacy about the different careers in pharmacy. There's so many incredible different areas in pharmacy that we don't hear about. We always hear about working at Walgreens. We always hear about working at the hospital. We hear about working for Pfizer, doing the industry route, but not all the other positions that exist. One, for example, we had Dr. Johnson, a pharmacist on the podcast, I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I didn't interview him. One of my co-hosts did. And he mentioned how one of his classmates, who's also a pharmacist now, actually got to be a part of like the Olympic committee for somehow, some way. And she was in Tokyo for the Olympics doing stuff.
Nice.
Like, I'm sure there's a lot of, like that's awesome. You know, like I'm sure there's a lot of people that didn't know pharmacists were probably involved with the Olympic committee somehow, some way. So that's something where there's so many different things that are out there. But if you're not exposed to it, how do you know? You know, you have to get that exposure. So that is the origination of this podcast. Like I said, it got passed down to me after about a year and a half. So it just becomes easier to say I'm the owner. I own it because I make all the shots now. I host, I edit. Luckily, I've been able to add incredible people to my team. Dr. Sean Harris, Dr. Riley O'Donnell Turner was also on my team for a little bit. I have Alvin Chen, who's a third-year pharmacy student. Rachel Borquest, who's also a third-year pharmacy student. We're trying to add more people to the team. And we're trying to go from not only exposing people to the different careers in pharmacy to transition more into also an educational platform. You know, I've learned so much from different podcasts where they talk about pathophysiology, disease state, they do topic discussions. There's so many things that students I felt we weren't really taught how to do a great journal club, how to understand biostatistics, different things like that, statistical tests, et cetera, et cetera. So I want this to be more of an educational platform and still advising people, whether it's pharmacy students or pharmacists, about the field of pharmacy and different things that is within pharmacy that you probably didn't hear about. And that was the original goal. Now we're transitioning to more of an educational platform, but we still have that original goal still in mind for sure. Yeah. And, you know, it's something that I absolutely love it. I love podcasting. It's a lot of work, as you know. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, you know, to get people to reach out to you, to have people that say they listen and they appreciate what you're doing only makes you want to work harder and provide great content to everybody. So that's something that I'm proud of you for starting this. And I hope you continue to do this because I've definitely heard some great content from you. And that's just how the podcast really came about, and it's going to keep going. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Man, that's good. You know, there's always great things that come out of this because for me, one of the best things that came out of doing the podcast was the networking of the podcast, having to reach out to people and meeting people and hearing their stories, because now I feel like I have a Rolodex of people that I can call up or email at a moment's notice to ask them about topics that's in their profession, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you actually mentioned that. I would say when I actually had a conversation last night about this with somebody, I was talking about how I feel a lot of times we forget how important networking is. Like the person I was talking to, he wasn't in pharmacy. His wife is a pharmacy student. So we were out to dinner and he was actually telling me, he was like, you know what? You got a good point. Because he was saying how he actually got his job from a friend who he was not qualified for at all. But because his friend had a great rapport with his boss, they took him over more qualified individuals. He's like, hey, I can attest for his work ethic, his personality, et cetera, et cetera. And now he's doing great for that company. And that just goes to show you, like, that's something that I really appreciated too from the podcast, was being able to meet all these different pharmacists and now have a Rolodex of connections that I never had before. And that's something that I never really thought about when doing this. But that's something that has definitely been very rewarding and very helpful because, you know, the job market, some people say it's scarce. I don't know that for a fact. But being able to have connections in all these different fields in pharmacy and have these different people that could become your mentors is definitely beneficial. And I'm definitely appreciative of that when it comes to podcasting. And I think a second thing, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I think my presentation skills and my public speaking skills have improved tremendously just in starting this. You know, I usually get, like, I feel good feedback after like patient case presentations or different things. Like I've learned from podcasting, like, when to change the tone of your voice, you know, when to slow things down when you're speaking, so the audience really absorbs what you're about to say, when to repeat yourself, you know. And that's something else that I didn't really think about from podcasting that would be beneficial. And that's something that I'm super glad I started to do so I could be a lot better at public speaking, because that was one of my weaknesses. And I feel like I've turned that into a strength now. So yeah, podcasting has been a blessing for sure for me.
Yes. From public speaking to even having just a nice conversation with someone, because now as a host of a podcast, I know how to ask those, because as a pharmacist, they teach us to ask open-ended questions when you talk to your patients. But now doing it just to have a conversation with someone, it makes the conversation so much better, because you go into the conversation more open and willing to learn about that person, which gives them more availability or more, just opens them up to be able to express themselves more and to get their point out better. So it just makes it easier to actually have just casual conversations with people.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's something that I should have mentioned, because that is true. I feel I've developed a skill to allow my patients to feel comfortable with me without even knowing me. Yeah. Because as like we met through Zoom, we never met in person. And we just had to build a rapport, a connection through a camera, you know, through it without meeting anything. We just had to start a conversation, you know, and we both were familiar with Dr. Grace. So shout out to him for connecting us. But that's something where it's like, I never realized how beneficial this would be also when it comes to my pharmacy practice skills, when it comes to patient care. Like you said, whether you work in retail and care, any field where you're interacting with patients, being able to just strike up a conversation and make them feel comfortable to be completely honest with you. Because a lot of times, you know, these patients just want to say what you want to hear, but they may not be taking their medications correctly. They may not be monitoring their weight or their blood pressure at home like they said they do. They could have just filled in numbers. We don't know. Yeah. But if they're actually being honest with us, and we can actually truly help them. And that's what I feel podcasting has definitely helped and been a blessing as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Definitely. So while we're on this, in the beginning, your words of wisdoms were never take advice from someone. How do you say it? From someone
who doesn't ask you about your personal goals.
Who doesn't ask you about your personal goals.
Yeah.
So
correct.
we're going to ask you about your personal goals.
Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And that's pressure too. If I say it on here, that means I got to live up to it.
Hey, man.
That's the whole point, right? Speaking into existence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So my personal goals. One, I've always wanted a restaurant. I've always wanted to own a restaurant. So I love food. I actually have a food blog page on Instagram. I'm honest. I'm horrible at this because I never remember my name because somebody took the name that I wanted. So I don't like the name that I have, but it is what it is. I'm pretty sure it's at foodie101 _IQ, but I'll double check that before we go today. So I have a food blog page, and then I would love to transition that into owning a food truck eventually. And then from the food truck, go into having my own restaurant. And nothing big. I want like one of those small restaurants where it's like they're creative. Like maybe once a week you get different things on the menu. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm sure DC area has a lot of that. Just like those small, there's not much seating in there, but like they make super creative food and it's like a fun environment to go to, kind of hipsterish type of thing. So that's something that I've always wanted to do. I love to travel. So I have a lot of travel goals. There's still a lot of countries I want to go to. I'm a big soccer fan, so I got to make sure I go to El Clasico before I die. I have to check that out. I got to watch Barcelona and Real Madrid play. I got to go to a World Cup. Maybe the Olympics too. I never really thought about that, but definitely traveling, owning a restaurant, taking this podcast as far as I can take it. I've always wanted to write a book about love. I think I don't know if you can tell, like I'm all over the place, but but one thing, I think love is a very interesting concept, and I think it's changed so much from the past with our generation when it comes to social media, when it comes to our short attention spans. So I'd love to write. I feel like a lot of the books about love don't pertain to our generation and the next upcoming generation. So I would love to write a book about just love and kind of like the concept of love and my version of what it means and how to deal with dating and relationships and stuff like that. And that's about it.
Okay.
Not too many personal goals.
Right.
That's about it.
And that leads to the next question, because we had a little off-camera discussion about it, but you came up with that words of wisdom because of a scenario. And I want you to break down that words of wisdom, because you said you're going to get into it. So I want you to jump into it. Why not take advice from someone who doesn't ask you about your personal goals? If you would like to answer that.
Oh, sorry. I actually lost you for a second, but it sounded like you were asking me about my words of wisdom and how that pertains to my personal goals. No.
So in the beginning, you said, never take advice from someone that doesn't ask you about your personal goals. So we asked you about your personal goals, and now we want to get a breakdown of those words of wisdom and why you said that.
Oh, why I said that. Okay. The reason why I said that is because too many times as people, we just seek advice on something. Everybody has advice, but not everybody knows what you're personally going through. So does that advice actually pertain to you? Anybody can give you general advice. It's very simple. But you don't go to general advice if you're looking for financial planning, or you go when it comes to tax season, you go to an accountant. You don't just go to anybody. It's like you go to certain people for certain help, and you need to have people in your corner that actually ask you the right questions. Well, okay, for example, if you want to do a residency, why? Oh, because I don't like retail. That's usually what I hear students say. Why don't you like retail? Oh, because the patients and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So why don't you like patients? Like, you know, it's like you keep asking why, and then they start to think about it. It's like, no, that's just actually a lot of groupthink. You don't have a problem with patients. Or, you know what? You may not want to actually do a residency, or you may not want to do something. You just kind of have this groupthink mentality, or been told, hey, this is the alternative to this, without somebody actually asking you, okay, what matters to you? Is what matters to you? Is it possibly money? Is it providing for your family? Is it getting into the job market as quick as you can? Is it a certain career that you're specifically interested in? Then you know what? Yeah, a residency could be good, but that doesn't mean you do a residency anywhere. You might need to do a residency at a specific place that will really benefit you in this career, you know? And that's something that I hear a lot of people just give blanket advice. And I think that's unfortunate, because a lot of people, they look at you with a stature. If you're a pharmacist, if you're an advisor, whatever the case may be, if someone looks up to you and you just give them that blanket advice, they're just going to take it, when there should be further questions asked, like, what are your personal goals? Why do you want to do this? I always ask people why 5 times to see what is the true reason for why they're interested in doing something, rather than just giving me the groupthink answer that I'm sure, you know, a lot of people give when it comes to certain responses. So that's something that I don't remember if I read it in a book or heard it on another podcast, but ever since I heard those words, I was like, that's what I'm doing from now on. If somebody doesn't ask me about my personal goals and they give me advice, I can't take it. I can't take it, because that general advice doesn't mean it's going to actually be beneficial for me and what I'm trying to do with my personal goals.
That's really good. And I wanted to ask you that on camera to break it down, because I know a lot of people get that general advice, and here on Pill Talk Podcast, we don't give out generic answers. This is brand name only. So it's something tailored for you.
That's right.
And like how you said, you got to ask why 5 times. Learn that in pharmacy school. And that's how you actually get to the root cause of something, just by asking why. Why you want to do this? Why doesn't that work out? And then that actually gets them to actually think about why did they get to that big answer without taking the bite sizes to actually think it all the way through. So I definitely wanted to get you to break that down in your ways, because I felt like that was a great words of wisdom that I think a lot of people need to hear, definitely in this era where everyone is on social media and trying to tell you to either quit your job or invest in this, invest in that. And it's like, before you do any major decision that can affect your life, why do that decision? Let's get to the cause of what you want to get to and what's your personal goal that you want to achieve.
Oh, sorry. Hopefully this person doesn't mind me using her as an example. I won't say her name, but it's, you know, if you have a family, a residency is tough, you know, and a lot of time is dedicated to the hospital and not to your personal life. So are you truly willing to not be the most present mother for the next year, you know, for your children? And if you're thinking about doing a second year, are you really willing to make those sacrifices for another year, you know, for 2 years? And that's something where it's like, people can tell you, yeah, do a residency, it's great. But is that actually great for you? Maybe it's better for you to work your way into the position you want. So you can still have them hours at home, or you're helping the kids with the homework. You're still present and stuff like that. If that matters to you, you know, you have to make sacrifices when it comes to your career decisions. It's just, what do you want to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice? So that's where I always try to tell people, like, you gotta do why 5 times. You have to do why 5 times, and you have to, you have to only take advice from people that ask you about your personal goals. Because at the end of the day, whatever your profession is, do you want to be remembered for your profession, or do you want to be remembered for who you were as a person? You know, like, do you want to be remembered as being a great father, a great friend, a great son, a great daughter? And that's something that, like, I'm just trying to challenge myself with. Like, I've missed a lot of birthdays. I've missed a lot of family reunions, different gatherings. And it's like, Do I want to be the super career focused and all of these things, or like what matters to me? You know, anybody, like you said, could tell me to be an entrepreneur, do all these things. That's great. That's great. That's great. But what if in my core, I want to be the family guy? You know, just because I have a talent for something doesn't mean it's right for me. I'm sure there's a lot of people that could have played in the NBA, but they didn't want to put in that work. That lifestyle wasn't what they wanted. They could have been, maybe they just want to be a parent. Maybe they just wanted to be a husband or a wife or whatever the case may be. So it's always important to definitely look at your personal goals and see how your professional or your career goals tie into both. So that way you can have the best balance when it comes to work and life.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what truly matters. I read a book. OMG, I forgot the name of it. Eat the Frog. I think it's called Eat That Frog, 21 Ways to Overcome Procrastination. And it said in there, hopefully I don't butcher the quote, but it's the quality of time at work that matters. Or no, it's the quality of time at work that's important, and the quantity of time at home that matters.
Nice.
So when you're at work, you lock in. I'm not on my phone. I'm not texting. I'm locked in. I'm dedicating, if it's 8 hours, whatever your shift is, work as hard as you can. So that way, once you're done with your shift, you can go home and attend to your friends, your family, do whatever it is you desire, work on your side hobbies, your passion projects, whatever the case may be, because it's your quality of time at home that truly matters. And that's something that I thought was a beautiful quote. And I definitely want to make sure I share that today.
Nice. So I know with you, we actually got your personal advice, personal goals and everything. And we know that being a great pharmacist and producing a quality podcast is your thing. So can you give us a quick recap of Capsule Production Podcast, what people can learn from it and where they can catch it at?
Yeah, certainly. So at Capsule Production Podcast, you can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. At Capsule Production is our tag on Instagram. You can just search Capsule Production Podcast on Facebook. You can find me, Jovin Lezeau. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a link tree, so you can go into anywhere and you'll find connections to the podcast. And you can find us on Spotify. I'll say this: every major streaming platform, Apple, Spotify. I forgot the other ones. I think everything except Google Play. We're not on Google Play yet. For some reason, they won't approve us. But everywhere else, we are on. So you can find us on any major network, major streaming network. And the only social media that we're not on is Twitter. So you won't find us on there. But at Capsule Production Podcast, that's the name right now. I was talking to Dr. Bartu Wilson over the, before we were recording, about possibly a name change. It might be doing some things different. So the name may change in a couple of months. That's the goal. New year, new us. That's what we're aiming for. So new year, new us. And just be on the lookout for that. And thank you to you for definitely kind of exposing us when it comes to the marketing tips. So we plan on having some merch soon. We definitely talked about that. So you kind of inspired me to create some merch. So eventually we'll probably have a website where we can have some merch, and hopefully you can just put that in the show comments, and they could just go in there and buy some merch if they want to support us.
Yes. You know me, I'm gonna make sure that all my audience sees this. Please go out and support Capsule Production Podcast. It's a great platform to get all your information out. I've been on there. Other great guests been on there. He's an amazing host. So please check them out. Oh, you're welcome, man. You're welcome. So
thank you. Oh, and before we go, if anybody is interested in residency too, please feel free to reach out. I know it's a very, very stressful process. So I had to go through it last year. So trust me, I know the whole virtual experience and all that. So if anybody's interested in residency or have interviews lined up, you have any questions, please reach out to me. Or you can actually go to the podcast. My partner and I, Dr. Sean Harris, he's at the VA in Gainesville doing his residency. we did a residency series. It's a 6-episode series where we went in depth about the residency experience. So how to respond to questions, the type of questions you could be asked for the clinical cases, going into how to prep for the interview, the virtual interview and whatnot, how to write your letter of intent, do your CV, et cetera, going through the whole forecast process. So anybody has any questions about that or struggling with that, please, I encourage you to reach out to me or Sean Harris, and we'll definitely help you the best we can. And you can always go to our podcast as a reference as well.
All right.
Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad you said that. Because I got one more question for you. Since you mentioned about the residency, how you can help people become prepared and listen to your 6-part series on Capsule Production Podcast. If you're able to, can you give us 3 quick tips that anyone can use to apply to get into a residency or help them along their residency application process?
Okay. 3 quick tips. My first one will be, when it comes to the clinical portion, the clinical cases that you'll have, you won't know exactly what they'll ask you, but use their rotations as a hint. What I mean by that is, if a place has an anticoagulation clinic, if they have a diabetes clinic, if they have a smoking cessation clinic, you're probably going to be asked questions on smoking cessation, on anticoagulation. So use the rotations that the residency provides as a hint, as a clue to the type of clinical case questions that you'll have to answer. And I would use your NAPLEX book to go over that section. That helped me out tremendously with interviews. So that would be my first quick tip. My second quick tip is, I know it's going to be costly, but apply to more places than you want. And hopefully you get interviews at the places you want and the places you don't care about as much, and use them as practice interviews. Okay. I don't believe I had the best interview experience my first interview, which was actually unfortunate because going in, like on paper, they were the program I was most interested in, but it was just the way the schedule lined up with my other interviews that I already pre-scheduled. So I wish I could have had a practice one, because that one I felt prepared me so much for all the other interviews I had coming up. So try to get the places that you probably care about least, schedule those interviews first, and use that as a practice for your upcoming interviews for the places you care about more later on. So that would be number 2. And number 3, be different. Be different. What I mean by that is, everybody is going to ask the same questions. Everybody's going to have the similar professional style for the letter of intent. I think being different will help you stand out, because residency, from my opinion, and from what I hear residency pharmacy directors say, is that they're starting to want people that are different, not necessarily following the trend, not the group think. So try to be different. Maybe add some type of unique style or to your letter of intent. You know, there's a certain structure, yes, we want, but you can make yours different, you know, and I kind of did that with mine. I can go into that more with anybody that wants to know more if they want to reach out to me. You can do that with your letter of intent. You can do that with your residency experience by asking the non-generic questions, something, and how you answer questions, something that I picked up from my colleague, Dr. Sean Harris, on the podcast. When we were talking about interviews, he was saying something that he loved to use, which I'll give you a 4th tip, would be he would use book quotes in a lot of responses, and a lot of RPDs like that. A lot of residency directors like that. So when they say like, how do you handle time management? I forgot the quote that he used. I think it was from the book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. There's like a quote in there that he used. So using book quotes to respond to a question, you know, that shows that you like to read in your spare time, like to educate yourself in your free time. And it shows that you're operating a bit different than everybody else. So that's something unique that you could do. So try to be different, because trust me, if you're going to look like everybody else. There's hundreds of y'all.
Yeah.
So try to be different. That's one thing. Use book quotes in your responses if you can. That's kind of unique and different. I think that's super cool that Sean was doing that. And definitely, I already forgot the other two. Definitely practice. Try to get the sites that you care about the least first for your interview so you can get some practice. And for the clinical portion, make sure to look at the rotations they have in the residency program, because that's going to be a great hint for the type of questions I'll ask you.
Man, that's really good right there. Hopefully, when someone hears this tidbit of information, that they're able to go into the interviews and knowing that, hey, these 4 quotes or 4 tips help them achieve that goal that they want personally. So make sure after listening to this interview that they understand, 1, don't take advice from someone who doesn't ask you about your personal goals. Ask yourself 5 whys before you take the group thinking.
Yeah.
And then make sure that you pursue your passion projects all at 100% the same way that you do your jobs. So some great takeaways from this interview, man. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us so much good information.
Hopefully everybody liked it. Thank you for having me on your platform. It's a pleasure to be on Pill Talk Podcast. I'll probably have to share the episode on my platform. This is my first time being interviewed, so it's interesting to be on the other side.
It's all good. It's all good, man. You did great. You did amazing. So
thank you.
You told us where to find the podcast. Do you have a social media, or do you want people to reach out to you on LinkedIn? How can people get in contact with you to find out a little more about you, the residency program, and more residency tips?
Yeah, certainly. So let's see. I would say find me on Facebook. That's probably the easiest. My name is spelled Jovin, last name Lezeau. The problem is, though, I usually don't add people I don't know. So you might want to send a message if you friend request me on there. So that way I know who you are and where you heard me from. So I'll add you in. Definitely same thing with LinkedIn. Usually I add anybody that requests me on LinkedIn. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Instagram, let me double check because I should know my own Instagram name, but I mean, YOLO. You only live once, so it's okay if I don't. It's okay to fact check yourself sometimes, people. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, Foodie101_IQ. Foodie101_IQ. You can find me on Instagram. It's a food blog page. And I would say that's about it. That's where I'm at. You can find me on those platforms. I'm very chill. So if you actually, I'll give you my email as well. If anybody wants to reach out to me, jovin.lezeau@adventhealth.com. So my first name dot last name @adventhealth.com. If anybody wants to send out an email, feel free. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, it's all the same. And another thing, because I'm extremely busy and I apologize in advance. What I was saying was I'm extremely busy, so I apologize. If I ignore you and I do not respond in 48 hours, that just means I read your message and I meant to respond and I got distracted. So please message me again. Do never feel bad to double message me. Anybody listening out there, if I could be of service to you, please reach out. If you just want to talk, have a cool conversation, you just want to know what's cool in Orlando, what to do, please feel free to reach out. If you want to know about how's Miami, different things in Florida. I travel to a lot of different countries too. I've been to Costa Rica, DR, Puerto Rico, Italy, France, England, Canada, et cetera, Mexico. So like, if you want to know, if you're a traveler, you want to know about places to go, things to do, feel free to message me too. I love talking about that stuff. If somebody wants to start a book club, let me know. I love books. So yeah, anybody, please feel free to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on. This was another good episode of Pill Talk Podcast. Giving you some medicine, your daily dose to inspire, motivate, and live at your full potential. So, Dr. Jovin, thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge and time with us today.
Of course. And one last thing. I forgot to include one personal goal, so shame on me. I've always wanted to be a millionaire. So I'll leave that. That's my drop the mic moment. Always wanted to be a millionaire. So that's also in the personal goals. Thank you.
It's coming. It's coming. Mm-hmm. The money just waiting on you. You just got to get to it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right, guys.